race of men. This is the third episode of Tuesday Afternoon Tea, where I drink tea and I discuss great English literature or other types of literature that are also great. Today, I will be discussing once again Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Last episode, we discussed really the home and the hearth and J.R.R. Tolkien. So we left off at one point at the house of Elrond, once Frodo and his companions had escaped the Black Riders. This time we're going to pick up at the Council of Elrond. Now, for those of you who need a reminder or who aren't familiar with the story, once they reach the safety of Rivendell, and the One Ring, which is the weapon of the enemy, has been brought forth in this council of the races of dwarves, elves, men, everyone who is aligned against the Dark Lord. Frodo brings forth the One Ring, and there's a character, Boromir. He's a man from the kingdom called Gondor, and then there's Aragorn, who is a ranger, and he is pretty much destined to be king of Gondor and to reunite Gondor and Arnor, which is the northern kingdom that was destroyed long ago. But what Aragorn has been doing in that time, and before he is made king of Gondor and Arnor, will be explained to us through this poem that is given by the character Bilbo. So Boromir, he has come to the Council of Elrond because he's had something like a vision, almost like a prophetic vision, that the sword is going to be reforged, the sword of Elendil that is the symbol of the kingdom, of the king himself, and that the doom is upon us, and the halfling, who is the hobbit Frodo, will be the one to come forth and be exalted in this doom. So when Boromir is discussing this vision that he's had, Aragorn gets up and says a word, and he doesn't look like much to Boromir. He wouldn't look like a king. He's a ranger who's been, out in the wild, protecting the borderlands, you might say. And he doesn't think him as much. And so, in defense of Aragorn, Bilbo gets up and utters this poem. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. So you should be able to recognize the first two lines of that poem. I'll read it again. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. Now, not all who wander are lost is kind of a funny thing, because it has no, its modern use has no semblance of what this quotation is driving at in the book, in the context of the book. So, for example, you'll see the quote, not all who wander are lost, on t-shirts. You'll see them on bumper stickers and decals. Seriously, what does a Sasquatch have to do, or what does Bigfoot have to do with pretty much a prophecy regarding the future king of Gondor? So what people, I think, often get wrong about this quotation, they like to take this quote just by itself, and they like to put it on bumper stickers and t-shirts because it gives a certain sense, it gives an approval of wanderlust, you might say. Now, wanderlust is that longing, that deep lust and longing just to wander, just to go aimlessly, traversing whatever mountains and rivers and meadows, just for the sake of wandering itself. Now, the quote itself, not all who wander are lost, would by itself appear to support something like a wanderlust. But as you'll see in how Aragorn defines his wandering and his purpose, you'll see that he hasn't been wandering for the sake of a wanderlust, but he's been wandering purposefully. So we'll go into the passage after that. And this is Bilbo after he's recited his poem. Not very good, perhaps, but to the point. If you need more beyond the word of Elrond, if that was worth a journey of 110 days to hear, you had best listen to it. He sat down with a snort. I made that up myself, he whispered to Frodo. For the Dunedain, a long time ago, when he first told me about himself, I almost wish that my adventures were not over, and that I could go with him when his day comes. Aragorn smiled at him. Then he turned to Boromir again. For my part, I forgive your doubt, he said. Little do I resemble the figures of Elendil and Isildur as they stand carven in their majesty in the halls of Denethor. But I am the heir of Isildur, not Isildur himself. I have had a hard life and and the leagues that lie between here and Gondor are a small part in the count of my journeys. I've crossed many mountains and many rivers, and trodden many plains, even into the far countries of Rhûn and Harad, where the stars are strange. But my home, such as I have, is in the north, for here the heirs of Valandil have ever dwelt in long line unbroken, from the father unto son for many generations. Our days have darkened, and we have dwindled, but ever the sword has passed to a new keeper, and this I will say to you, Boromir, ere I end. Lonely men are we, rangers of the wild, hunters, but hunters ever of the servants of the enemy, for they are found in many places, not in Mordor only. If Gondor, Boromir, has been a stalwart tower, we have played another part. Many evil things there are that your strong walls and bright swords do not stay. You know little of the lands beyond your bounds. Peace and freedom, do you say? The North would have known them little but for us. Fear would have destroyed them. But when dark things come from the houseless hills, or creep from sunless woods, they fly from us. What roads would any dare to tread? What safety would there be in quiet lands, or in the homes of simple men at night, if the Dunedain were asleep, or were all gone into the grave? And yet, less thanks we have than you. Travelers scowl at us, and countrymen give us scornful names. Strider I am to one fat man who lives within a day's march of foes that would freeze his heart, or lay his little town in ruin, if he were not guarded ceaselessly. Yet we would not have it otherwise. If simple folk are free from care and fear, simple they will be, and we must be secret to keep them so. That has been the task of my kindred, while the years have lengthened and the grass has grown. But now the world is changing once again. A new hour comes. Isildur's bane is found. Battle is at hand. The sword shall be reforged. I will come to Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith being the new capital of Gondor. So Aragorn, he says here after this poem that Bilbo has made, that yes, he's a ranger, and sure, he doesn't look like the great kings of the past. He doesn't look like he's worthy from his appearance, but from his deeds, that is what makes him worthy. He's part of this unbroken line that has handed down the broken sword of Isildur that cut the ring from Sauron's hand. He's the only one who possesses this sword and can reforge it and reclaim the throne of Gondor and Ardor. Now, this is completely different than a wanderlust, right? If you have a wanderlust, and you see these decals often on all-wheel vehicles and usually off-roading and sport vehicles, because it has a resonation with those who like to go camping in the wilderness, who have a certain wanderlust. But what Aragorn is saying here is that his wandering only really appeared as wandering to those who were ignorant of him. Really, his real purpose was to protect the simple folk of the north. It was to, in secret, stay the hand of the enemy, the servants of the darkness, that he and his fellow rangers, they would go and hunt in the wild, but they would not just go into the wild for the sake of, being strange hermits, but they would go into the wild for the sake of protecting the borders of, uh, he gives mention of this town. The town is Bree, or of the hobbits in the Shire. Um, Aragorn and his Dunedain rangers, they become something strange and something like a legend to those in the north, because they haven't revealed themselves, but what they're doing is ceaselessly protecting the north, just as uh, Boromir and his men have been protecting Gondor in the south. And yet he says they still receive even less praise for that, because they are so strange to the people of the north. Now, this kind of reminded me of something in the scriptures, that it would seem like John the Baptist, or even to a certain extent Jesus, would have this type of characteristic about them. Now, Aragorn, you could say in the Tolkien legendarium, really is a type of Christ. He shares all these characteristics with Christ. He's the coming king. Uh, his words are going to bring healing and restoration, uh, and he's going to contend with the Dark Lord himself. Now, that is really a Christ-like figure, and it's a Christ type. For the wandering itself, it's something that would be perceived as wandering only, like I said before, by those who are ignorant of him. And likewise, those who are ignorant of the purpose of John the Baptist, or even Jesus Christ, they might just perceive their endeavors and their missions as just an aimless wandering. So we'll get into the Gospel of Mark really quick. After I'll show you what tea I'm drinking. Drinking Moroccan Mint green tea. I was never much of a person, a green tea person, but it's grown on me recently. I think I've finally moved out of that. Uh, when you're a child, you have all these certain disgusts that, maybe I once had green tea as a child, and I just thought it was terrible, and I just never had green tea again until years and years later. But I'm a fan of it now. So let's read from the Gospel of Mark. And this is concerning John the Baptist and then Jesus Christ. Chapter 1, verse 1. The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. As it is written in Isaiah the prophet, Behold, I send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, Make ready the way of the Lord, make his path straight. John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness, preaching a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. And all the country of Judea was going out to him, and all the people of Jerusalem, and they were being baptized by him in the Jordan River, confessing their sins. John was clothed with camel's hair, and wore a leather belt around his waist, and his diet was locusts and wild honey. And he was preaching and saying, After me one is coming who is mightier than I, and I am not fit to stoop down and untie the thong of his sandals. I baptized you with water, but he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit. In those days Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee, and was baptized by John in the Jordan. Immediately coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens opened, and the Spirit, like a dove, descending upon him. And a voice came out of the heavens, You are my beloved Son, in you I am well pleased. Immediately the Spirit impelled him to go out into the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness 40 days, being tempted by Satan. And he was with the wild beasts, and the angels were ministering to him. Ending at verse 13 there. Now, in the Gospel of John, there's a similar account, of course, of John the Baptist, but it's a little bit, it regards the interaction between him and those who have been sent by the Jewish religious leaders. And those who have been sent to inquire of John the Baptist, they're questioning who he is, who are you, what's your purpose, why are you here? And really he's there to fulfill the prophecy in Isaiah, like it said, that he is the voice of one crying out the wilderness to make straight the path for the Lord. And he's saying, one is coming, who is far greater than I. Now, this wandering, you might say, in the wilderness, it wasn't an aimless wandering. He wasn't in the wilderness for no reason. He was in the wilderness crying out because of this prophecy. He was in the wilderness, you might say, uh, to bring those who, were in Jerusalem out of their place, uh, maybe even just out of their place under the religious authority there, out into the wilderness. And then Jesus comes to be baptized by John. And after he does, notice how he also goes into the wilderness as well. This time for him to be tempted by Satan. And so you notice a similarity of the wilderness here. That, in Tolkien's story, of course, he is drawing heavily from his Christian tradition, his Catholic faith. And Aragorn is wandering, but with a purpose, with a mission. Now, John the Baptist, Jesus, they go into the wilderness, not just to go into the wilderness for the sake of doing it, but they are very purposeful and intentional about why they're there in the wilderness and what they're doing there. So I would just like to leave you with that really, if you get this idea that if you see any of these bumper stickers or these t-shirts, I have a t-shirt myself actually that says that. But of course I realize its understanding is not of wanderlust. Really, when you think about wandering, if you have a desire to wander, that itself, if it's not purposeful, if you aren't going out, uh, with a certain intention in mind to protect others and uh, be a servant unto others, then what is your wandering for? You even consider the apostles after the ascension of Christ. You consider Paul, the apostle Paul, the other disciples who went to many distant lands. Why did they do so? They didn't just travel there to see the sights. They didn't just travel there because to satiate their desire for wandering, but they traveled there to spread the gospel, right? Their wandering had a mission. It had a purpose. If you yourself are called to wander somewhere, to go somewhere, then do it with purpose. Don't just do it for the sake of wanting to go somewhere. All right? So that's just the message I would like to leave with you. I pray you contemplate it and it sits well with you. God bless.